I think that we all can do something in the world to make a difference. And you may not even know. Maybe it's saying hi to somebody. Maybe it's smiling at somebody. Maybe it's helping somebody across the street. Maybe, it's putting, I don't know, I should say money in someone's meter so they don't get a ticket. But there's just all kinds of, things that you can do. So to make the world a better place and to maybe make somebody's day, because we never know what kind of day someone's having or what somebody's going through.
Would love for you to sort of introduce yourself. How would you describe yourself, and where are you from, and what keeps you going these days in terms of the work that you're doing?
So I actually was born and raised in Los Angeles. I went away to college and came back, went away to grad school and came back. So here I am. I've been a development specialist with Teen Cancer America for a year and a half. And what I get to do is I get to have so much fun planning and executing events in Los Angeles, on the other side of the country. I get to solicit donations for these events. We do raffles and auctions. I have a great team of people that I work with. You mentioned Simon Davies, and he's just an amazing leader. So I'm just so grateful to be a part of this organization.
No, that's terrific. And you shared with me that you're actually born and raised right here in LA. So it's we were discussing how that's kind of uncommon in a way, because this is a town with people that are transplant from all over. I'm from the East Coast, and I think people from all over the world come here to pursue their dreams, and of course the sunshine and whatnot. But like, what has been your experience being born and raised in this town and seeing it evolve over many years to what it is now, which is presumably different, but maybe some things are the same as it was growing up?
Yeah, it's definitely changed over the years. I got the best of both worlds. I got to grow up in the canyon. So I grew up in Benedict Canyon, which was just an amazing place to grow up in a city like Los Angeles that is so big, but have the experience of canyon life. It's a different way of living in so many different canyons in Los Angeles. When my parents split up, my mom kept the house in the canyon, and my father has a house. He still has a house in Westwood. So I kind of got the best of both worlds. Los Angeles has changed a lot in different ways. I think for me, though, it feels the same because I have so many friends who I grew up with who were still friends now. And a lot of people went away at different parts of their lives. They went away to college or grad school or had jobs, but came back to Los Angeles. And like, just for example, next Saturday, I have a annual birthday lunch with a group of my friends who I went to elementary school with, and we get together every year and catch up and laugh and just say how grateful we are that we've been friends for like more than most of our lives, basically.
That's amazing. And so when you were growing up here, what was your upbringing like?
I had a good life. My father was the executive vice president of business affairs for Aaron Spelling Productions back in the 70s and 80s when he kind of monopolized ABC. So that was really fun. I got to go visit him when he worked at the lot at 20th Century Fox. And I was very busy. I didn't want to be at home a lot, so I had a lot of friends. I was very social. I was always doing something, taking a class somewhere. When I was in junior high, I was just involved in whatever I could be at school, taking dance lessons after school. I played volleyball in high school. So yeah, I look back and I had a really good life. I had my struggles too. Like, it wasn't always easy being at home for different reasons, but I think my escape was to just not be there and to just have fun.
And so how would you describe the role you played in your family?
So I was the middle of two boys and the definite kind of peacekeeper, the one who everybody went to. My mom, she's no longer alive, she passed away in October, but she sort of made us kids feel responsible for her in a lot of ways. When my parents split up, she kind of put on us that, we needed to sort of be there for her. And as long as she was okay, then we would be okay. So, that translated into me people pleasing, caretaking. It was just sort of, and I was the girl. And I wasn't treated any different because I was the girl, but that was just sort of the role that I sort of assumed. And then I became, as I got older, like the one who people went to when they needed to talk or they needed help. It was in my family, with my friends, etc.
Did you sort of looking back now and reflecting on how that role kind of either stayed with you to some extent or maybe evolved over time as your relationships and organizations changed? Did you embrace that role, or would you say it was sort of thrust upon you and you didn't? It wasn't necessarily what you wanted for different reasons?
I think that I didn't even know that I was embracing it, but I was. I think that it was a natural thing for me. Like, I believe that being empathetic, let's say, is not something that you can manufacture. You either are born empathetic or not. It doesn't mean that you can't evolve and learn to be, have sympathy for people or compassion for people. But empathy is a different thing. It's really the ability to put yourself in someone else's shoes and kind of feel their experience. And I do feel like that is the person that I was and still am. And I mean, I even went to grad school for it and got a master's in clinical psychology. So I sort of feel like I was just that natural person.
It's amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things you shared with me recently is what was a little bit of the backstory in your family. And so your connection with Teen Cancer America, I think stemmed significantly from your personal experience with your brother. So I'd love for you to share a little bit about that experience and who your brother was and how it's sort of impacted the work you do today.
Yeah. So I had a younger brother named Jeff, and when he was 15, he was diagnosed with cancer. The kind of cancer he had was called AML, acute myelomonocytic leukemia. It was a very rare type of leukemia for a boy his age. And just to tie that in with Teen Cancer America, let's say, is he was 15 when he was diagnosed. He was treated at UCLA and Cedars, a lot of times with pediatrics, so really young kids, and yet he had this adult leukemia, which is what teen cancer does. So we are serving, I'm just going to go sidebar for a minute, but we are serving teenagers who, same type of thing. They're in the hospitals a lot with these little kids, and they have these adult type of cancers and stuff like that. They don't always know protocols. So my younger brother would have been the perfect candidate for the kind of work that I do today. But anyway, he needed to have a bone marrow transplant. I actually matched him, so I donated my bone marrow to him. And he did go into remission for a while, but then he passed away, came back. And then once it comes back, it was like pretty much, he tried again to want to try to beat it, but the odds were really against him. So he passed away in June of '88. Yeah.
Sorry.
He lost his battle. But when he was sick, he showed nothing but courage and fearlessness and strength. And he even used to talk to some of the other kids in the hospitals and, tell them not to worry. And he just tried to be there for them. And, one of the things he said before he died was all kids should be given a chance to live. And that became the motto for our family. So our family started a fund after he died that was named after him, that raised money for kids who needed bone marrow transplants. And we were taken under the wings of the Ronald McDonald House here in LA. We helped kids all over the country, all over the world. We folded the organization, I think by now maybe 8 or 9 years ago. There was money there, but there just wasn't anybody to manage it.
Okay.
But, a lot of great work came out of starting that, nonprofit. And I took what he said and it became my personal mission to kind of do the good work, carry that out, not just in the work that I do for a living, but just in all areas of my life. I mean, years of volunteering at Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times, which is a camp for kids with cancer and their families. volunteered at a camp for kids with heart disease. So just really wanting to improve the quality of lives of kids, people, just in general. Yeah.
That's beautiful. Thank you for sharing all that. So how did his passing impact you?
It impacted me greatly. I'd never had a loss at that point in my life that I can remember. I think all the grandparents were still alive back then, so I hadn't really had any kind of loss. And I went away to college 2 months after that happened. I was here for the 8 months that he was sick, and I wouldn't trade that time for anything. My older brother was away at college, and he didn't get to be there, and he wanted to come home. And we didn't know until the very end that he wasn't going to make it. So, of course, he was in his last year, and everyone kept saying, stay, he was going to Syracuse, you're going to graduate. But I got to be there, and even though it was hard being seeing him in the hospital and see him go through all that, it was time that you can't get back. And that's one of the things that, I'd shared about with you, is that time is so precious, and it's something that once it's gone, it's gone. So I'm grateful for the time. I learned that life is truly a gift. We're sort of on borrowed time with our own lives and having people in our lives. We never know. Life is fragile. And also how little control we have. I mean, I set out to hopefully try to save my brother's life by donating my bone marrow, so that my intention was good and pure, but sadly, it didn't work. So there's all kinds of things that translated for me in going through that grief, but not so much, in the early stages of it, I think as I got older, because I was so young. So when I look back at that year with going away to college after he died, it was sort of like, wow, I'm at college and I'm partying and I'm having fun, but I was also going through depression, but I didn't know it. I didn't know it. So losing him really did become the driving force for so much of what I've done with my life, personally, and what I do for other people and have wanted to do for other people.
Yeah, no, I can tell from the moment you stepped up to bail me out of my bib thing to obviously sitting here with you today. I can tell that is all very true through and through, which is so inspiring because it's, on our various prep chats for this discussion, I got to see and learn more about the depth of that tragedy really in your life, and how you're doing work now, not just to kind of sort of celebrate the legacy of your brother Jeff, but also to help other people that are maybe going through something that's similarly very, very, very difficult. In pretty much any version of cancer is that. And so would love to know then, where did you turn to for support, and how did you, it sounds like, as you said, you were sort of battling a bit of a depression, and which would make quite a lot of sense given the severity of that loss, and yet maybe you didn't have the support that maybe an organization like Teen Cancer America might have now for the families, for example. But what was your support system like during that time?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and I don't think that I really had one or even knew if I needed one. You know what I'm saying? Because I had gone away to college so fast, and I reconnected. I had a bunch of friends from LA who were going to the college I was at that year, and so I didn't there is a amazing woman who's been a part of our family for years. She's a psychologist, and she was around the time that my brother was sick, and we would go see her separately as a family. So she was there when we were going through that whole process. She's still a part of my life today, and she's seen me go through many different things. And I probably saw her when I came down, home for a visit or something like that. But I don't think that I really processed a lot of the grief until I was in my 30s, really, in realizing how certain things about that loss might have affected me in relationships, maybe the ability to really open up my heart. I was very guarded. I didn't think that I was, because I'm such an open person. But it's one thing to be open and share, and it's another thing to be open and receive and truly be vulnerable. And so, yeah, I didn't do a lot of that work until like maybe almost 10 years later.
Mm. And what precipitated that work?
Probably more like relationship stuff, just looking at some of the relationships that I'd been in, and realizing that it wasn't just that person, it was really me, and picking that kind of person, let's say somebody who wasn't really like emotionally available or couldn't commit, but there was something about me that was picking that person because I couldn't do those things either. And I thought that I was like this, oh, I'm so open and I'm so this and I'm so that, but I really wasn't.
Yeah. It's like the shadow concept of your clinical psychology. I learned about the shadow concept. I know a lot of people have spoken about it, but it wasn't until I saw mine that I was like, wait a second, that's actually very interesting.
Yeah, exactly. So, and it's, I always look at like certain things as being a process and not an event. Like doing work on yourself is a process. Doing grief work is a process, and you can't put a timeline on it, I don't think, for anybody really.
Mm-hmm. What did you learn through that process, and what kind of tools or of course different types of there's all different kinds of sort of methods, let's say, of that people will develop programs around for healing kind of trauma, traumatic events in circumstances such as the one of your brother's passing. But what was like a central tool or framework that you used during that time, or even just support system that kind of helped you get through that?
I think giving back helped to heal me. So like part of that was, okay, not only our family starting the charity, but like my involvement in Camp Ronald McDonald for Good Times. When like I started as a volunteer in 91. So that was a few years after my brother died. And back then they had like 6 different sessions in the summer. You'd go for a week and it was amazing. But they had one session that was dedicated to siblings, which I'm a sib. That's what we called ourselves. That's what we called them. I lost a brother to cancer, and all the kids who came to that session had a sibling who was battling cancer, or maybe maybe the sibling had passed away. So I thought, okay, this is a way to get started. And so being around siblings and being up there in that environment definitely was a part of my healing process. And then over time, I started volunteering at the patient camps. And I realized, because I didn't know how I was going to feel, if it was going to trigger any kind of emotions for me seeing patients, because I hadn't seen anyone that I can remember that had cancer since my brother had died. And so I realized, like the first patient session that I did, these are just kids. They're not defined by their disease. They're just kids going to camp, wanting to have an experience like all the kids who go to camp. And there's no limitations. They were able to go up to the camp and do all the activities and things like that. So yeah, and then just doing the work that I do, like it's who I am. It just comes purely from my heart. I don't think about, like, I don't have, I've never like had this agenda. I think the things that I've done with my life just are because it's what my heart wants to do and give and help others always like improve the quality of their lives. I don't even like think about it. I just do it.
Do you have any stories that you can share with us about the kinds of impact that maybe someone or a family or a circumstance you've witnessed some kind of either transformation or some kind of gratitude on the part of the people you're supporting, so that it's the kind of thing that gets you going in the morning?
Yeah, I think I shared one with you about the boy from camp. I can share that one because, I don't ever think about like how what I do or what I've done impacts other people. I just, like I said, it comes from my heart, so I just do it. But every now and then when you do hear how what you did impacted somebody, it's like, wow, okay, like that's pretty cool. And so back to the SIB session that I used to do. So that was almost like the same group of kids that would go to that one session every year. They looked forward to it, and it was almost like a very cliquey group of volunteers. It was like the same ones that always wanted to go to that session. There was a certain kind of energy that the SIBs brought that was different than the patients, and then there was a certain kind of energy that all the volunteers had, and we just sort of had this really strong connection with ourselves as volunteers and with the kids, and watching them grow up, summer after summer. And there was also camp in the winter. So sometimes we got to see them like twice a year. And we weren't allowed to keep in touch with them. It was a rule of the camp. They didn't want to foster like their dependence on us in case like we couldn't go back in the summer or something. So if they wanted to keep in touch with us, they would have to write a letter to the camp office, and they would read it and then forward it to us, or vice versa. But when Facebook started, they had no control. And so people were connecting on Facebook. And so I hadn't been up to camp in a while. I was still volunteering, helping with the gala and stuff. But I had people reaching out to me from that camp. Some were, past campers. And it was wonderful to see, how well they were doing in life. And one day I got a note from one of the campers. And he wrote how much it meant to him to go up there every summer, to see us there, to know that we cared about him and the other kids, and what a difference it made that we gave our time for them. And I remember it just brought tears to my eyes, because I just thought, this is just what I'm doing. Like, I'm not doing it because I want a pat on the back or I want someone to say like, great job, So that really hit me. And then recently we had somebody come and help in the office, and she was friends with my supervisor, Michelle. And she and I were just talking, and she kept asking me questions about my life. And she was at a point in her life where she has sort of been at a crossroads pretty much since the pandemic, and she's trying to figure out what she wants to do with her life and find a direction. And so just in me sharing like the things I've done with my life, and how my background, it was really in psychology. I mean, that's what I pursued for a really long time. And for the 5.5 years before I had my daughter, just over 19 years ago, I was in the field of substance abuse. When I went back to work, I had no idea that I was going to get into the field that I'm in now. Before Teen Cancer America, I shared with you that I ran a charity called Children's Cancer Research Fund that raised money for kids, for children's cancer research, and we did events. And so I had no background in that. So anyway, in sharing my story with this person who was in the office, she had sent me this lovely email later saying like how inspired she was by my story, and she wanted to know more and stuff. And I was like, wow, okay. I'm just like sharing, I had no idea that it had any inspiration, that, because I remember saying to her, it's never too late to make a change, to sort of start over. Just follow your heart, really.
Yeah, I love that. I certainly get that sense from you, and I try to coach people as best I can to find that kind of alignment with what you're talking about.
Yeah.
Where it's not about even the outcome. It's not about you. It's about the broader kind of like mission or purpose, which sounds like it's in you through and through. That doesn't just sound like it. That is the truth.
Yeah, I mean, I really feel like the work that I've done for, because I was with the other charity for 12.5 years now. I've been at Teen Cancer America almost 1.5 years. So wow, it's like almost 15 years. And it doesn't feel like a job, because it truly is like my passion, So I'm so grateful to be able to be in alignment, like what you said. It's at this, point in my life, or for these last like 15 years, to truly be in alignment with what is in my heart.
Yeah, I'm feeling that now with like this project and some of the things I'm doing, and in a way I never have before. And I think it's extremely energizing.
Yeah.
And at least for me, there's similar kind of through lines with what you're describing, in the sense of it's not about me.
Right.
It's really not. It's about like living out your in some way your destiny, which aligns with your dreams, which aligns with your kind of your purpose and your heart and all these things that only you, Vicki, uniquely can offer the world. And so
yeah,
it's kind of like incumbent on all of us to kind of attempt to get as close to possible as we can to delivering on that kind of blessing in a way.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I feel like, or I think with me, there's definitely a selflessness to, who I am. It serves me probably 95% of the time. The other 5%, is like work to be done still, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's learning how to like have boundaries, like healthy boundaries and things like that. But yeah, there's always work to be done on ourselves.
Amazing. And so I'm actually curious, before we move on from that young sort of mentee in a way, that is she now working with teen cancer, or is she?
No.
Okay.
She had just come in to help in the office. Yeah.
Whether you got specific with her, or if you have some specifics in mind that you could share with our listeners, what would you encourage someone to do who's in that moment of kind of trying to figure out their purpose and get re-energized and, take action in a way that is more aligned with what they want and the kind of thing that really gets them energized than maybe the status quo?
I would encourage them to just take that risk. I mean, it's scary. Taking risks, it's a scary thing. I know for me, I totally fear the unknown, and throughout my life, I've learned to, and I'm a Taurus, so Tauruses don't like change. We like anticipate change. We don't like change. But once we make the change, we're like, wow, like that wasn't so bad. And I think it's just taking that risk, a leap of faith, whatever you want to call it, and just going for it, because like, what's the worst thing that could happen? It doesn't work out, so you try something new. But I feel like the more you're working toward, like the more you are in alignment or trying to get in alignment, you may not, it may take a while to truly to match your outsides to your insides, but just to keep going. And you'll know it's just something that, it's just a feeling that when it's the right thing for you to be doing, or the right, job, relationship, whatever it is.
Yeah, I have, I'm going to be coming out at some point, kind of an animation for the way I see kind of what you just described, which is, your life path. You kind of start at the beginning and imagine like a V at the bottom, which is kind of where you're born. True north is right in the middle, and your life experience can bring you off true north. Like a data point can happen right here. And then it's on you to pay attention to that and maybe become a little bit more rightward in that case, so that you're closer to true north. You get a data point, maybe you overshoot.
Right.
That happens a lot of times. People are like, oh, I was a lawyer for 20 years and I just really want to do nonprofit. And then they get in the nonprofit world and it's like, some of this is exactly what I want, but I need to tweak it again a little bit more because there's some version of my needs that need to get met.
Right.
So
and it's like, it's okay, right? It's like trial and error. I mean, I don't know that many people who have decided to just do one thing with their lives and just stuck to that one thing. I think people try something, they might do it for a period of time, and then they aren't fulfilled by what they're doing, or they want something that feels more rewarding or meaningful, or brings joy or whatever it is. But I truly don't ever think it's too late to sort of start over.
Yeah. No, I'm with you. I think life's an adventure, which is why the Latitude has a lot of my interest in around the themes and motifs around mountaineering and adventuring and hiking and being in nature. And I think life is meant to be that way.
Yeah.
You're meant to like carve your own path sometimes.
Yep.
And occasionally, you go on a good long hike on a well-trodden kind of trail, and that's fine. But at some point, that trail will end. You're allowed to go off piece.
Yeah.
And you learn a lot. Like at a minimum, you learn a lot. And I think that makes for wonderful people, being willing to take the risks and maybe get, stub a toe or hit your knee, break your wrist or whatever. But if you're willing to kind of learn and regroup and take those lessons on, eventually you become an expert, mountaineer in a way.
Well, there's this great quote. Let me see if I can say it without butchering it. I don't remember who it is. I think it might be this woman named Anais Nin or something. When the pain to stay the same is greater than the pain to change, a change will occur. So did you hear?
I love that. And isn't that something that people say in the addiction world?
Maybe. I mean, it can be like kind of, modified or whatever. But it's something along those lines, or like you can compare that to like a rock bottom for somebody. Let's say when somebody hits a rock bottom. But I think a lot of times that people get committed to their stories, what they tell themselves, and if it's negative thinking, then it's going to keep them where they're at until they can't be where they're at anymore, where, changing may not feel good at first, but it feels better than where they were at.
If you ever find yourself in that headspace, sounds like maybe less than 5% of the time you are, because you mentioned, the way you are in terms of being very giving and empathetic and whatnot is 95% good, but maybe 5% is a challenge for you. So if you ever find yourself in that negative, like, rumination loop, what's your playbook?
Writing a gratitude list. Like, you cannot be grateful and unhappy or anxious at the same time. And so if you are feeling like, you're in a negative thinking cycle or anxiety, if you stop yourself and write down or think about or say out loud things you're grateful for, it automatically takes you out of that space and puts you into a place of more calmness and joy. And also just telling myself, like, that I'm not being realistic, that it's not reality. Depends on what it is that, I'm battling in my head. But most of the time we create these scenarios that are really not true.
So why do you think we do that?
Let me say this. You could hear 10 positive things about yourself and one negative thing, and you're going to remember the negative thing. And I think that people have a hard time, I don't know, for different reasons, maybe believing the good about themselves or seeing the good or positive. I don't want to say good because then it's like value laden, the positive things about themselves. And a lot of it probably has to do with how they grew up, maybe their home environment, what they were told or what they weren't told. And sometimes because change is scary for a lot of people, that it's easier to stay stuck and sort of settle than to work on change. It's a commitment. I mean, I'll say something that I learned for me, like when I worked in treatment, because I worked in substance abuse for 5.5 years before I had MS. I shared that already. And I used to, like, when I went into the field of psychology, I went in because, like, I want to help people, change their lives and do this and do that, and or just, feel better about themselves or and I learned, and I don't say this with any kind of like negativity, that the only thing that people can really change about themselves is their behavior, right? Who we are at the core is who we are. It was started when we were children, and it shaped who we are, depending on, what we were told by mom, dad, caregiver, whoever. That's our core. Our behaviors, a lot of the time, is a reflection of those things. So we can work on those things. We can, if we have insight or awareness, if we've had, if we're working on ourselves, I feel like we could heal and nurture and stuff, but that core's still there. The only thing that we can truly change is our behavior and how we react to certain things. Do we react or do we respond? Responding to something probably is more productive than reactive a lot of the times. It depends on what it is.
Yeah. Before, so this has all been really terrific, and I wanted to make sure we had a little bit of time here to chat about that quite a few experiences you had in the clinical psychology world. So when we were catching up recently, you told me a little bit about some of the lab work that you were doing in clinical psychology and their involvement with animals. And would love to, share those stories because I think they're really cool.
You want me to share about the monkey?
Yeah, please.
So when I was going to school in Boston, I wanted to do something that was outside of like the university, school requirements for my BA in psychology. So I went to look at this board one day to see what other things I could do to get units. And I saw something about like potty training, capuchin monkeys at this organization that trained capuchin monkeys to aid quadriplegics. It was called Helping Hands. And I was like, oh my gosh, like, who didn't want to have Curious George as a pet? I have to do this. So I went up there. I said, hey, I'm from Boston University. I'm studying psychology. This is what I want to do. And I got accepted to do it. So it was such an incredible experience, obviously once in a lifetime. But basically what I had to do was, went up to the organization a couple times a week. My monkey's name was Spencer. And I'd get there and I would, fill up his little bottle with punch. He would drink his punch. And then once he was done drinking it, I would take him into this room. And it was just him and I in this room with a cage, a table, a bell, and like what I call Scooby snacks. It was the snacks, he would get for doing good. And the goal was...
What were his snacks?
They were like little applesauce things. And then like these little like gummy, chewy things. Sometimes I think like pieces of banana.
Okay.
And so the goal was to potty train my monkey as part of their whole training process. I mean, they would train these capuchin monkeys to, start VCRs and get food from the refrigerator.
Wow.
And so, so I would sit there and Spencer would, run around. He would actually come up. I know I sent you pictures. I couldn't find that one, but he would sit on my lap and he would take the pen, because I had to record notes and stuff, out of my hand and like scribble on paper. It was so cool. But anyway, the goal was to get him to go to the bathroom in his cage. So when he would start to go to the bathroom outside of his cage, which is what he did at first, I would, command him to go to the cage. Spencer, cage, Spencer, cage. Eventually he caught on. And when he went to the cage and went to the bathroom in the cage, I would ring the bell. Then he would get a snack. It was just a B.F. Skinner conditioning.
Pavlovian kind of.
Or, yeah,
well,
Skinner,
I guess not quite Pavlovian.
Skinner conditioning, basically. Yeah.
Behavior reward. Yeah,
yes,
that
yes.
Kind of thing with my dog trainer.
Yeah. And it was such an incredible experience. So grateful that I had it. So much fun.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And then you mentioned there was a couple movies that actually tell some of, maybe not necessarily the lab work, but monkeys that were placed with people with different types of disabilities, or maybe someone who's been a victim of some kind of accident when they're paraplegic. Can you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, this one is, I think it is based on a true story. It was called Nate and Gigi, or Gigi and Nate. Nate was the boy, Gigi the monkey. And this was a kid who was like, had his whole life ahead of him, really seemed to be adventurous. I won't give the whole movie away, but basically he has a terrible accident that happens to him, and he ends up being paralyzed, I think, from his neck down. So they end up bringing a monkey in to help him do different things. And it's a beautiful relationship, actually. I forget, I did research, or I did look to see if that monkey came from that organization that I helped with, and it didn't. But there was another movie, whole different kind of movie, called Monkey Shines. And this was a monkey who was assigned to a quadriplegic man who became very kind of obsessed with this man and didn't really like anybody else coming around, and would act out. The monkey would act out and stuff. And I think that monkey might have come from the organization that I help with. I don't know.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah, I think if I remember correctly. Yeah.
So are there? I don't know the right way to say this, but are there many? I don't know if you have any sense of the amount, but monkeys, quote unquote, in the field, like as service monkeys.
Yeah, I think so. But there's certain states that they don't allow for exotic like animals. So those states, I don't think that they allow for that. But yeah,
Right.
no, I think the organization is still around.
As we're wrapping up here, I wanted to know what you think maybe our listeners, like a message you'd like to share with our listeners in really any domain, in terms of some of the things we've talked about today. Obviously, the work you're doing and purposeful living, but also in a mission-driven organization supporting teens going through cancer. With all those topics in mind, is there any message in particular you'd like to sort of impart on the audience?
Well, one of my favorite stories I shared with you about the starfish, I think, has such a beautiful message. And it goes something along the lines, it's not my story, but there was a man walking along a beach one day, and he saw a boy kind of down the way throwing like stuff in the ocean. And as he got closer to the boy, he realized that there was all these starfish like all along the beach, and miles of starfish. And he asked the boy what he was doing, and the boy said he was throwing the starfish back in the ocean. And the man said, "Why?" And the boy said, "Well, the tide is out, and if I don't throw them back in, that they're going to die." And the man said, "Well, there's too many for you to make a difference." And the boy picked up another starfish and he threw it back in the ocean, and he said, "I just made a difference for this one." And for me, what that means is, you may not be able to change the whole world, right? But you can make a difference to someone's world or to someone's life or to someone's day or to someone's moment by just being there, listening, sharing, caring, giving. I mean, the list goes on. So, yeah, I think that we all can do something in the world to make a difference. And you may not even know. Maybe it's saying hi to somebody. Maybe it's smiling at somebody. Maybe it's helping somebody across the street. Maybe, it's putting, I don't know, I should say money in someone's meter so they don't get a ticket, But there's just all kinds of, things that you can do. So to make the world a better place and to maybe make somebody's day, because we never know what kind of day someone's having or what somebody's going through.
I love that. And when you shared that with me last time, I mentioned what came to mind is a similar kind of, story in a sense that people might enjoy thinking about, which is like if you throw a rock in a pond, let's say, the ripple effects will go, even though the rock fell in at a certain place,
right?
And you don't, probably found its way to the bottom. The ripple effect of that rock being thrown, who knows where that,
right?
So some of the people you had as campers, let's say, decades ago, like they may have turned out to be better parents, maybe better friends, maybe better spouses, or colleagues or what have you. And so I actually think it's like, don't underestimate the little things.
Yeah. And also just be kind. I mean, it takes nothing. Being kind doesn't cost anything. And I just think that, there's so many people out there who aren't kind, and for whatever the reasons are, and just be kind to each other.
Yeah, and what I will say is I actually think being kind is not only fun, but it's way more rewarding than not, right?
Yeah.
It's actually, if you just make it, like if it's like let's say a habit you're trying to develop, it's like, just do a little bit and see how you feel, check in with yourself, and you'll realize it's like, it's free to give and you get back way more. It's the same thing, like for the work you're doing of it, you're so focused on, living out your life in a way that is aligned with your heart. And so I think you have found a kind of energy from that in the same way that I'm describing. I know we could both agree being kind, I think, is the same thing.
Yeah.
It's like, be the change you wish to see. Be kind to people in the way that you hope others will be kind to you, and it'll come back.
Yeah. And also nobody's perfect. There's this great type of art. It's Japanese art called kintsugi, I think, if I'm saying it right, KINTSIGI. And what they do is they take things like ceramics and pottery and things like that have broken, and they put it together with gold. And it's sort of like a metaphor for, so that we're all flawed, right? We are all like imperfect, and we still have value, which there's a great story I used to, when I worked with clients and stuff like that, where I would like hold up a $20 bill. And I would say, like, who wants this $20 bill? They'd say, we do. And I'm like, okay. And I'd throw it on the ground. Who wants it now? I do. They'd say, I do. And I'd stomp on it. Who wants it now? I do. I said, okay, now pretend like it's in mud and I've stepped on it and it's in mud. Would you still want the $20 bill? And they'd say, yes. And I'm like, why? They said, because it's $20. I'm like, exactly. So it doesn't matter what you've gone through in your life and what you've done. And we've all done things that, have not really been good for us, but, we work through those things, but it doesn't change the value of being a human. It doesn't change the value of who we are.
That's such a great message.
Yeah.
And I'll add one for the, any folks out there that might be challenging the idea of it just being covered in mud is what I would say to that is, even if you rip a $20 bill, you can bring it back to the bank and they will give you a new one.
Yeah.
And I think that is a wonderful way to think about it.
Yeah.
Amazing. So Vicki, this has been a terrific conversation. Thank you so much for sharing your life and wisdom and honoring your brother Jeff in this conversation. And I think hopefully our listeners will enjoy it as much as I did, because I think it was a lot of fun, and really look up to you as a quiet leader. So
well, thank you, and thank you so much for having me as a guest. It was super fun, and I feel honored to be here. So thank you.